The horseman lifted up both the bright sword and the glittering spear. And there is a multitude of slain, and a great number of carcasses, and there is no end of their corpses. They stumble upon their corpses. Because of the multitude of whoredoms of the well-favored harlot, the mistress of witchcrafts, who sells nations through her whoredoms and families through her witchcrafts. Behold, I am against you, says the Lord, and I will discover your skirts upon your face, and I will show the nations of your nakedness and the kingdoms of your shame. Ras Reports. Greetings, giving thanks, Ras reporting ahead of the time. Running down the line. So going back to the situation in the African Summit, Joe Obama went over there, President, giving his little speech, his little spiel about how the Western imperial interests are going to come in and they're going to really make Africa a great nation upon the earth. Now wait a minute here. Are the Africans blind? I hope not. I really hope not. At least not all of them are. And we know that because we're starting to see some protests against these campaigns. Of course, we have the environmental groups that are still existing there trying to push out these industrialists that are coming and polluted and contaminated their waters and causing all these diseases. So they have a reason for what they do. And yet they're rebranded and turned into Boko Haram, the big terrorists and this and that. No, CIA behind this. Just like Al-Qaeda, just like ISIS. So we got the CEO, President Barack Obama, and he get up there and he talking about, oh, you know, we're going to use the people, we want to bring people up in the middle class and this, that. You know, this is a real funny situation here. We got our middle class here melting. You know, they put out the ice, the big ice sculpture of the middle class and just let it melt over the Occupy movement. It's true. It's shrunk by something like 10% or whatever over the last decade. And it's continuing to shrink. And on top of that, what do we base the middle class on? What is the criteria for being in the middle class? That's a big question, because they recently did a study where they determined that the American dream was only attainable by a 1% or whatever, whereas in the 70s it was attainable by 3%. And this was a very moderate basis for the American dream that they used. So again, what's the basis of American class? I mean, what's the basis for unemployment? You know, they talk about how the president's increased unemployment, but if you look at the number of people that aren't looking for jobs and include them, has the president still increased unemployment? So little ways along the way how they tweak the system so that it forms that illusion, so that it looks as if it's performing in a productive direction, but in all actuality, it's just stalled, and it's just beginning to stumble backwards now. And that's key. You know, many are called, few are chosen, and broad is the path of destruction. Yet, you know, we recognize that the truth does reveal itself to light, and the truth will come upon itself, and Babylon will fall in these times. So President Barack Obama, now he's excluding a number of countries from this African Summit, being which Zimbabwe, Eritrea, Sudan, and Central African Republic. They also withdrew aid recently from Swaziland. Now that's interesting, because first of all, we had our interests in Sudan, staked out in Sudan, but recently they had a civil war. Now the opposition, the rebels say, you know, we're just fighting a civil war because I love my country. But you have to think for a minute there, wait a minute, do you think maybe there's Eastern interests at hand, that China's gone into Sudan and attempted to contain that region? I believe so. Central African Republic is the same thing going on. Is the French the only people that are still exploiting those people, or have some other interests come in? Zimbabwe, this is a big one. The president doesn't invite Zimbabwe. That's pretty apparent that China has taken control over that country. And the way that the Western imperial interest thinks is that, hey, you know, we brought you all this civilization, you got to come with us. But it's all a fantasy. What we see, this so-called beauty, we don't own. If we go into those people's property, we get arrested for trespassing. So there is no real freedom here. This is not really the free-loving world. This is only a vehicle, again, only a vehicle for those international stakeholders that control the capital over the world. And they only bring to market the products and services they want to bring to market. They control the supply chain. That's key for them.